International Karate 1. Well, Dropzone was winning awards and doing very well generally in 85, 86. And just sold and sold. And I got contacted by the company System 3 basically to say, "Whoa, great, you're wonderful. Can you come and sort out our project and just do a bit of the graphics and make it shine and great and do something?" And I thought this was a bit weird. And originally I said, nah. So eventually I got talked into going down to have a look. And two distinct things happened. One was I went to see a Spectrum version that was about 3% complete of this karate game, and it was just appalling. It was, you can't convert that, nothing. It's just, I'll let you get on with it, I'm going to do something else. Because I was already thinking about Dropzone 2 at that point. And then the second thing was, later that afternoon I got dragged into a bar where there was a Data East Karate Champ machine. And the guy said to me, "Can you copy that?" And I thought, well, yeah, I could, but I could also do an awful lot better. And IK1 was basically my interpretation, sticking loosely to what the overall IK thing was about, whilst retaining a karate feel as well. And it was my interpretation reversed into the Dropzone game shell to get it done as quick as possible. And pretty done. Not only that, though, I was a big fan of Exploding Fist, which at the time I had played to death with my mate Barry. We'd set up till 4 in the morning playing that. And whilst it was brilliant and sold an unbelievable amount of units, I remember thinking, I could make that better. I could make it smoother. I could do this. I could put a living background on it and bring it to life. And as usual, I would say, yeah, until I went and did it. Most of the stuff, the 8-bit stuff I developed was on an Atari 800. But there was no tools in those days. So if you wanted to do graphics, you had to edit your own graphics. And to edit your own graphics, you had to write a program in BASIC that used a joystick and allowed you to very slowly move around the screen, turn pixels on and off and choose a colour. And it was laborious. And that often started with a bit of graph paper, and you would fill it in with a colour pencil and then turn it into hex and then type it into a program listing. And I did have a macro assembler that was provided by Atari, but even that was primitive. And you had to devise all sorts of ways of getting lumps of object code into the computer, and 4 or 5 of them talking to each other without overlapping each other, and a whole load of other nightmare stuff. So you had to do all your own tools. Whereas these days, of course, you just get Dev Studio out, copy a Maya, maybe 3D Studio or something, and just off you go, and you're suddenly creating films. I mainly started on the 800 because it would be more difficult, because the sprite system was very different to the Commodore. But yeah, once all that worked, putting it on the Commodore was relatively straightforward. IK Plus was definitely the result of me thinking, what do I do next? And I had the inspiration for a third fighter. And I thought, that's a damn good idea. And I tried to keep a lid on it as best as I could. I didn't tell anyone I was doing that for about 6 months, trying to make the third character work, because on the 64 I'd already run out of sprites and stuff. And it certainly wasn't going to work on an 800, Atari 800. So yeah, I was sort of working on that. And then I get a call one day from Activision and said, why don't you come in for a little meeting, because we'd like to propose IK2. And I went down there, listened to what they had to say, and actually said, well, watch this, and put a disc in a 64. And there it was. And they all went, sign here. So I signed a deal with Activision. On IK Plus, trying to get the third man running on a 64 was tricky, because I'd run out of sprites. But what I did was I pulled in a load of code from the Atari 800 version of IK1, which was actually character-based. So I had sprites on the screen, characters behind, forming the third man, and then the animated screen behind that was just bitmap graphics as a backdrop. And I had some fun and games with the coding, making the guy that was the character block man go in front and behind of the other two. So I was forever switching colours of the sprites to try and make the first, second, third order work. When it came to the 68000 versions, that machine had way more power than it needed for having 6 men on the screen. And there is a cheat mode in IK Plus 16-bit where you can have 6 guys dancing on the screen to disco type music because of a sequence of cheats I put in the original game. It's actually in the original game. With IK1 and IK Plus, I had to resort to some pretty weird ways of getting characters on. On the one hand, I can do art, I can do animation. Well, old-fashioned 8 bits, old school graphics. So I had a program on an Atari ST called Neochrome, which had a buggy, but it did basically work, animation facility, which I made use of. And I found myself jumping around at home in front of mirrors doing my own karate moves, because I did some of it at university, and videotaping it, and then slow-moing a videotape on the screen. But the trick was, how do you then get that in 1986-7 into the computer? So it seems fairly simple to me to actually put cellophane over the screen, resize the TV picture so that the men on the videotape, or the film I was using or whatever, were the same size as I wanted to edit within Neochrome. And I just used to freeze frame things and draw outlines around it, advance it 3 more frames, draw it again. And I had all these cells of cellophane. So yeah, and that's basically how I did it. I then would spend another couple of days drawing the outlines in and filling in the details and filling in face and belts and other bits of clothing and stuff to fill out the characters. The most complex one was the backflip, because if you look at it in the game, it is quite fluid, the way the man sort of flies backwards and does a complete somersault. That actually came out of the end of Grease. So if anyone wants to go and get the original Grease film with Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta doing their thing at the end, there's a man in the background at the fairground scene doing a sideways on somersault. And that's the bloke that stars in IK Plus. The other one that I remember coming out of a film was the double head kick, where the guy loops up with both legs, and that's Jackie Chan out of the Cannonball Run. So I had to sort of slow-mo that and freeze him down to size. He went out in America as Chop and Drop, and I remember having to go to America in the same week of the 1987 stock market crash, and sit in front of the big boss of Activision and talk about how to do an American version. So I lived in America for a month or two in 87, redrawing all of the animation for 16-bit IK Plus. It basically involved shortening trousers, ripping off shirt sleeves and so on and so forth, and rebuilding the game out there. And it went out as Chop and Drop.